guys, what's up? This is Steffi, aka In My Humble Opinion, and in today's video, I'm going to be ranking my least favorite episodes to most favorite episodes of Black Mirror from seasons 1, 2, and 3. If this is your first time coming to my channel or watching a video of mine, welcome. For the past 6 weeks, I've been reacting to season 3 of Black Mirror, so if you're interested in checking out any of those reaction and review videos, I will be linking them down in the description box below. I know a lot of you were wanting me to react to previous seasons of Black Mirror, and as of right now, I'm not going to be doing that because I was planning on reacting to another show, but eventually, maybe over the summer, I may go back to seasons 1 and 2. But in lieu of that not happening, I decided to rank all the episodes of Black Mirror that have come out thus far. And I'm pretty sure this is obvious because it's going to be a countdown, but if you haven't seen any Black Mirror episodes and are planning on watching Black Mirror, I highly suggest you like this video so you remember to come back to it or put it in like a watch later playlist of some sort, because this isn't going to be spoiler free. There are going to be a lot of spoilers given throughout this video, so now's your chance to do that. And one last thing before we start, I just wanted to say that obviously this list is just my own personal preference of episodes that I do like and the episodes that didn't really resonate with me. If a particular episode that was your favorite ends up being something that's on the tail end of this countdown, that's okay. Like, don't come after me. It's okay to have different opinions from one another. In fact, I'd be really interested to hear how you rank all the Black Mirror episodes that are out so far. So if you want to comment down below right now and like start ranking the episodes as I go, whatever way that works best for you, I'd be really interested to see how that turns out. Okay, so without further ado, here we go. Coming out at number 13, I have season 2, episode 3, The Waldo Moment. What I liked about this episode is obviously how relevant it is to what is going on here in the United States. It's not a far reach to see how the animated bear character in this episode is very similar to the current president of the United States of America. Shudders internally. Now, the reason why it's at number 13 for me is because this isn't particularly an episode that I would want to go back and rewatch. The characters, they're not really likable or memorable in any way. And I know like the technology isn't everything in a Black Mirror episode, but the technology that was utilized in this episode, I just feel like it didn't really move the story forward or influence the story in any way. And I guess a memorable moment for me in this episode is that last sort of shot when we see our main protagonist wake up in the streets and he sees all the screens and billboards plastered with Waldo's face on it. I feel like that's just like really eerie and very unsettling when you think about how this like ridiculous animated no-nonsense character was able to capture such a wide audience and just somehow managed to be everywhere. Which is kind of what's happening right now in the United States, so that isn't too far of a reach. So number 12, I have the infamous season 1, episode 1, the national anthem. What I liked about this episode was the social commentary that it was making. And for me, the takeaway was how people tend to get caught up in like the sensationalism of the story, and they get distracted by all the hysteria and chaos around that instead of focusing on what is truly at stake. They got caught up in the fact that this prime minister had to have sex with the pig on national TV, and even though that's like, oh my god, really scandalous, people forgot like why he had to do that, and it was to save the princess's life. The reason why I didn't really like the episode and why it's like 12th on my list is, again, this isn't an episode I wouldn't particularly go back and rewatch. There's stronger episodes in the Black Mirror world. In terms of a memorable moment in this episode, a really memorable shot is when the camera has like this overhead look of empty London streets and it's like practically deserted, and you just see like the princess like staggering her way, and it's empty and it's quiet because everyone is inside, just eyes fixated on the screen. That image just really basically sums up what that entire episode is about. So at number 11, I have season 3, episode 5, Men Against Fire. And for me, out of all the episodes in season 3, Men Against Fire was the weakest one for me. What I did like about this episode was the social commentary, and I believe that, you know, the theme of conditioning people into seeing a different group of people in a certain way is so relevant, especially with what's going on right now with the whole like Muslim ban situation happening. I talked about it in that particular reaction video, but I just feel like that whole narrative of isolating a certain group of people and painting them in a very negative, vile way is a narrative that has continued throughout history, and we've seen it time and time again. But the reason why this ultimately ends up being my number 11th episode is, again, because out of the grander scheme of Black Mirror episodes, this one isn't particularly too memorable, and honestly, on a personal note, for me, the blonde chick was so annoying. Oh my god, she was so annoying. And you know, no offense to that actress who plays her, I'm sure she's a wonderful lady in real life, but I just could not stand that character. And a memorable moment for me is when they reveal what the roaches look like for the first time, because that scared the shit out of me. So at number 10, I have Season 3, Episode 6, Hated in the Nation. So what I really liked about this episode is that this was sort of Black Mirror's take on the crime, mystery, drama genre. And I also like that narrative twist at the very end, how the people who participated in that hashtag ultimately like had to suffer the same fate. And I like the theme that was tackled in the episode as well about like public shaming. And I feel like that's a theme that's been tackled in different ways in several different Black Mirror episodes, but I like the way that they tackled it here in Hated in the Nation because they really utilized social media. So in terms of why this ended up being 10th on my list is, again, because I just feel like there's stronger episodes in Black Mirror, and also I didn't really like the main detective. I just felt like she was kind of grouchy throughout it. For an episode that's an hour and a half, I personally would have liked if they made her character a bit more bearable to be with, but you know, she was under a lot of stress, so like, I'll give her that. And in terms of memorable moment in that particular episode, just that whole sequence of when they take one of the people into the safe house and then the killer bees manage to break into the house and they're like running up the stairs, like just like that whole sequence, it was just so exhilarating and exciting to watch, but also like very unnerving because you were like, oh my god, what are they gonna do? Coming in at number 9 is Season 3, Episode 2, Playtest. So for those of you who watched my reaction and review video for that particular episode, you know that I was really fucking terrified, and that's what I loved about this episode, was that it was so much fun to watch. I know in that video it probably looks like I wasn't having a lot of fun, but I do like to get scared, and that episode for me like literally had me on the edge of my seat. I felt like the main protagonist in this episode was so likable, which is why I feel like the ending is so like sad to see, because you're with him for like an hour and you really grow to like him and then he dies. But the only thing about this episode is that the beginning is a bit slow, because the first 30 minutes you're like building who this guy is and they're trying to introduce like his fears to you and setting up like, okay, this is how we got into the house. But once you're in the house, it's really good. And a memorable moment for me, honestly, is when they cut to black and you hear the song. Oh mama. Oh my god, it is like insane. Like when I watched it, I was just like in literal shock of what had just happened. So coming in at number 8 for me, this one's a little bit controversial because this is normally higher on people's lists, but for me, coming in at number 8 is the Christmas special, White Christmas. So what I did enjoy about this episode is obviously the acting was really, really great. Jon Hamm was really good in this episode because he has such a presence on screen. And I really enjoyed the narrative structure of the story of it being like 3 in 1. So you get like the backstory of Jon Hamm's character, and then you get the backstory of the other guy's character, and then you ultimately see how it all connects into like one big general story. Something that I feel like can definitely kind of hinder someone's experience of Black Mirror is thinking too much about how the tech works. And for some reason, I just like really didn't understand like how the egg worked. I was just so confused. Like in that one scene where Jon Hamm is talking to the lady and the lady is like in the egg, but she's also like operating in real life. That was just like so confusing for me to like wrap my head around in terms of like how exactly does that work. In terms of memorable moment for me in this episode, I have 2. The first one is the reveal of the daughter being Asian. You feel so bad for him because he's wanting to see his daughter so badly, and then he ultimately finds out that that's not his daughter. And then another memorable moment for me is when John Hamm goes outside for the first time after being released, and he sees people as like blocked out gray figures, especially knowing that his character really likes communicating with other people. That was just like the perfect sadistic punishment for that character. So coming in at number 7 for me is Nosedive, season 3, episode 1. I love the look of the episode. I thought it was so beautifully directed by Joe Wright. I like the use of the pastel colors, and also the soundtrack for this particular episode is so gorgeous. It was done by Max Richter. I feel like this world in general is just like very like underhand shade, which is like fun to watch. And I really liked Bryce Dallas Howard's character, Lacey Pound. I think on the surface, she's someone that you can easily be frustrated with, but by the end of the episode, like, I don't know, I just like genuinely really liked her. And again, like, just that whole idea of like people being very obsessed with their social media and this desire and need to be liked, very relevant to the culture and society that we live in now. And I guess like the only thing about this particular Black Mirror episode is the fact that it doesn't really have a twist. Things like slowly but surely go awry, but there's no like dramatic, oh my god, what the fuck moment that is usually very characteristic in a typical Black Mirror episode. And a memorable moment for me in that episode is just that whole scene where she is literally being dragged out of the wedding. It's so heartbreaking and sad, and you're like, oh my god, girl, you have lost your goddamn mind. But whew, what a scene. So coming in at number 6 is season 1, episode 2, and that is 15 Million Merits. Obviously, it's the first time we hear the iconic "anyone who knows what love is" that's literally in every season of Black Mirror, I believe. And what I really liked about this episode is how they like tackled this idea of like selling out. As someone who is on YouTube, I've seen so many people who have such a unique voice and perspective on the world start out, but then they eventually like buy into this system so they can like reach a larger group of people, but it's like they're kind of owned by this bigger system that influences and infiltrates their own unique voice and perspective. And you know, aside from like looking at it in like the YouTube world, that can like easily be applied to any creative field in general, or just like life in general. And for me, a memorable shot and moment in this episode is when you see the character in his black room, and then the camera pulls out and you see that it's merely just a set piece, and he's actually living in this big white pristine clean room, and you like realize that he's bought into the system. It's kind of sad because, you know, you see this character who was so very clear and had such strong beliefs ultimately buy into the system. So at number 5, I have season 2, episode 2, White Bear, and it is wild. My god, when I watched this for the first time, I was like so confused, but also like really scared because the people who were chasing her look like people from The Purge, and that movie really scares me. And I just really liked that touch of the people were essentially like mimicking what she did in the crime by like filming her. And again, like this episode tackles public shaming. Just this idea of making public shaming like a spectacle, almost like a Disneyland attraction of some sort, was very disturbing and unsettling to see. And I just feel like this is such a classic Black Mirror episode because it has that twist at like the very end. And a memorable moment for me, of course, is when they're shooting the gun at the girl and then the confetti sprays into the air, and then it's slowly revealed what is happening. Oh man, chills. So coming in at number 4, and it's kind of thematically similar to White Bear, but I have season 3, episode 3, Shut Up and Dance. So what I really liked about this episode is the acting. I thought Alex Lothar did such a great job in this episode because you genuinely like feel bad for him, but then when it's revealed at the very end like what he did, it kind of makes you reconsider how you feel about this character. Similarly to White Bear, in both of those episodes, throughout majority of the time that you're with these characters, you feel bad for them because they're literally being put through like the worst shit possible. But then at the very end, when it's revealed like what they did or like who these people really are, both of those episodes makes you reevaluate how you feel about them. And specifically, again, returning to Shut Up and Dance, I like that throughout this episode the tension never really drops. The minute that he gets that first text, it just keeps building and building and building, and it's like, how can this situation get any worse, and Charlie Brooker manages to show you how it's done. And I guess for me, a memorable moment is when he picks up the phone for the first time and his face is all bloody and you just hear his mom hysterically screaming, and then he hangs up the phone and he turns around and you see like these blue flashing lights on his face. You're just like, oh my god. So at number 3, I have The Entire History of You, Season 1, Episode 3. So what I really liked about this episode is just the technology. Throughout my life, I have kind of like always wished that I had like photographic memory, or I just had the ability to record everything the way that I see it. There's just so many things you can explore with just the technology that's used in this episode alone. But again, what I think is really important to emphasize in every Black Mirror episode is that it's not necessarily the technology that leads the story, but it's the way in which people interact and use the technology that leads the story. And it's ultimately because of our main character's overanalyzation and paranoia, even though it ended up being true, that leads to the demise of his marriage. Similarly to Nosedive, we see how this world where this technology lives in, we see how it drives this character insane and nuts to the point where he kind of self-destructs in a way. And a memorable moment for me, of course, is when he's having this conversation with his wife about this like pretentious African painting that he like fucking cannot stand. And we see him zoom in to the background and we see that same African painting and you're like, oh shit, man, he was right. But it's like, God, it just shows why, even though you think that this technology would be like really cool, it can lead to more bad than good. So coming in at number 2, I have Season 2, Episode 1, Be Right Back. I'm personally drawn to stories where they try to confront the questions of the afterlife. Like, what happens when someone dies? What happens to their soul? Is it possible for us on Earth to communicate with those who have like passed on? Those questions are the ones that really intrigue me. And I just felt like the minute they introduced the technology in this episode, I thought it was so fascinating, but I could immediately see how problematic it was going to be. God, it's just like, that's just such an unhealthy way to deal with losing someone, trying to build a recreation of them. And despite, you know, logically realizing how problematic it could be, emotionally, I really empathized with the wife. Like, I could totally see why she would be so desperate to want to use that technology. I just thought this was like so beautifully acted and also beautifully directed. And it's no coincidence that the person who directed Be Right Back is the same person who directed my favorite episode, and that is Owen Harris. He did such a brilliant job directing this episode. And a memorable moment for me in this episode is the very end, when we see that the recreation of Domhnall Gleeson's character ultimately ends up in the attic, because we saw that conversation in the beginning of the episode about how his mom would place things in the attic so that she wouldn't be able to remember them and see them. Oh, so creepy. My favorite episode, and that is obviously the fan favorite, internet favorite, critic favorite, San Junipero, Season 3. I love it so much. I'm gonna keep it brief, I'm gonna keep it short, but I just really love the world of this episode. Like, it's so colorful, it's so vibrant, it's so full of life, ironically. The soundtrack, the score in the episode is great. The acting is phenomenal. Of course, shout out to Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Mackenzie Davis. They did such a phenomenal job. The writing is so clever, and obviously if there was one world of Black Mirror that I wish was true, it's San Junipero, because like freaking time traveling. It's funny that this is like my favorite episode of Black Mirror because it's like the most atypical Black Mirror episode in that we finally get our first happy ending, and if Charlie Brooker could have given it to any of the characters in any Black Mirror episode, I'm glad he gave it to Kelly and Yorkie, because I just love these characters so much. And this honestly was the episode that made me really love Charlie Brooker as a creator, because for me, obviously we see that he has range because he has the ability to write so many different kinds of stories, but the fact that we now see that he has the ability to write a uplifting, happy love story between like queer interracial characters, I really became a fan of Charlie Brooker after this episode. And of course, a memorable like shot moment for me is that moment at the very end when Yorkie drives up to the freaking house and then we see the reveal of Kelly walking behind the beach house. That moment always makes me like smile and makes me so happy. And honestly, like in looking back at like my top 3 favorite episodes, Entire History of You, Be Right Back, and San Junipero, I realized that the episodes of Black Mirror that I find most compelling for me are the ones where we see how technology plays into an intimate relationship. We see how the technology in these respective worlds either breaks a relationship apart, complicates a relationship, or brings together two people that otherwise would have never gotten together. And just like that range alone shows like the bad and good that can come out of technology. It just like all depends on how we use it. Woo, my lord. So those are my rankings of my least favorite to most favorite episodes of Black Mirror. Again, let me know what your guys' list looks like in the comments down below, or you can find me on social media here. I'll post it right here. This is my personal links, and this is the In My Humble Opinion social media account. So you can tweet at me, you can Instagram me, you can Snapchat me, whatever, I'm there. I'd be genuinely interested to know like what your guys' personal list looks like, and let me know like why you compiled the list the way you did. So for those of you who have watched any of my previous reaction videos, just thank you guys so much. This has been such a fun like past 6-7 weeks, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking Black Mirror with you guys. This is a show that needs discussion. Like, this is a show that really makes you think, and it's fun to talk about it with people. So I just really enjoy the community that we've built here on YouTube together. Again, if you haven't seen any of the reaction videos that I've done, the links will be down here below. If you guys did manage to watch all of my reaction videos, let me know which ones were your favorite. So over here are the episodes that I reacted to for the very first time on screen, and over here are the episodes that I sort of rewatched and reacted to. So those are two very different reaction review style episodes. So let me know like which one you guys prefer, so that can help me moving forward in making these types of videos. So again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below on what your personal rankings for all the Black Mirror episodes are, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications from this channel so you know when a new video from me comes out. And yeah, thank you guys again so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, everything I said was just my own personal thoughts and all in my humble opinion. Bye!